I'm Idiotech, and today I'm going to review Kholat. So Kholat is a game based on actual events that involve the mysterious deaths of 9 hikers in the Ural Mountains. It's kind of an interesting case, actually. There's a lot of inconclusiveness surrounding the deaths of these people. If you actually go read about it on Wikipedia, which I did when I saw this game, it's actually quite interesting to read about, so I thought a game based on it would actually be kind of interesting. The game itself is a horror game that focuses heavily on atmosphere and world building rather than game mechanics. So you've seen games like this before, things like Dear Esther, although this is significantly better than Dear Esther, to be fair. But games like Dear Esther, for example, games that some people would class as walking simulators, that's the type of game it is, but it's also a horror game as well. This game does have some performance problems. I haven't run into any bugs or crashes, and most of the time the game does run between 45 and 60 FPS at maximum settings, and I'm running an R9 290. However, in some areas the game did drop down to 19 to 20 FPS. In certain areas of the game, certain events, set pieces really tanked my frame rate. It was only for a very short period of time. It's not a very common occurrence, and the game certainly is playable, but I do worry that some people with older hardware might struggle in places when trying to run this game. Now, the options menu is quite satisfactory, so that shouldn't be too much of a problem, but just be aware it's not as optimal as I would like, but it's certainly nowhere near as bad as games like Ark Survival Evolved, for example. This is a visually stunning game. The engine has a lot to do with this, obviously, because they're using Unreal, as I said, but the world design is also superb. Some of the set piece design is fantastic to look at, very creative, as well as just the general fidelity of the visuals. The shaders are also very spectacular in places. The lighting is great. The mood and the tone, as well as some of the particle effects, like the wind and the snow, all brilliantly done. The developers have made full use of the tools here, and it results in an immersive and sometimes quite terrifying experience to wander around this world. It's some of the best usage so far of the Unreal 4 engine I've seen, quite frankly, and it's brilliant.
In the end, the only thing I saw was a flash, an insufferable burning light, the pain ripping apart my body.
A number of very good voice actors were hired for this game. Sean Bean, as it says on the store page, the Steam store page, was used, and he's okay, honestly. I think there are some better voice actors in the game than him. He seems a little phoned in at times. I think they just used him because of the name. If you don't know who he is, he was in Lord of the Rings as Boromir, and he was in Game of Thrones as Eddard Stark, so I assume most of you know who he is. He's good, but there are other people I think are better. But the voice acting overall is superb. Now, the writing doesn't always hold up, honestly, but the voice actors make up for it. Where the writing falls down, the voice actors have stepped in and they've tried to improve upon it. It's obvious, and they do a really good job. As for sound design, it's incredibly well executed here. I felt a constant sense of tension when playing, and that was entirely due to the sound effect work. The visuals are great, but the sound effects just creep me out in this game. I was constantly looking over my shoulder in game to see if there was something there. I really enjoyed the way sound was used as well, just to inform the player of various things in the world, like where a note was. If you're walking past a note, it would sort of rustle in the wind and you'd hear it and you'd know there was something there, rather than having like a user interface element to just tell me there was something there. I appreciated that, and I hope it's used more in games in the future. Story and atmosphere are the two largest focal points of this game, and while the atmosphere is spot on, I can't really say the same for the story, honestly. I feel that the source material was kind of wasted. Without going into too much detail, the game chooses to take a very supernatural route when attempting to explain what happened to the lost hikers. And this is, I guess, expected when you consider it's a horror game, but I would have appreciated it if they could have gone into more detail about the real-world events themselves first, for those of us who don't know much about the case, because I felt a lot of the time that they were referencing things and I didn't know what they were, and later I looked them up and found they were referencing things. So, I mean, maybe they're hoping that people go and read up on the case, but it would have been nice for them to flesh it out a little bit more, maybe some flashbacks to the original investigators. I mean, personally, I would have preferred to play a game where I was playing as one of the original investigators and trying to work out what actually happened in the real world, and maybe with a less supernatural slant. Now, sure, it wouldn't be the same game, but what we have here is kind of a generic horror game, really, and it doesn't really conclude with anything. The end of the game is very unsatisfying in my mind. It leaves the player not really understanding any much more than anyone in the real world does. And sure, no one knows the answer, but it would have been nice to have a concrete conclusion, or an opinion at least, on what they think happened, and maybe something that was a little less supernatural, honestly. Now, sure, I'm not really into supernatural themes very much. I don't really like the horror genre, so take all of that with a pinch of salt. You may love it if you're a horror buff or you love supernatural things, but for me personally, I would have appreciated a more reasonable and honest look at the actual events. And it could have still been scary, but just maybe not this scary and not the way that this is done. But, you know, that's not what we got. And it's okay, but the end is just not very satisfying at all, if I'm honest. This is the area where I think a lot of people are going to take issue with this game. The game loop essentially consists of wandering around the world using a not particularly helpful map to find a series of locations, and in each location you'll find a note, you read that note, and then you move on to the next location. When you've found all of the locations on the map, that's pretty much the end of the game. It's not a very game mechanic rich or heavy experience at all. It's more of an interactive storytelling experience similar to games like Dear Esther, so do not expect game design and game mechanics when coming into this. All of that being said, there are a few other mechanics, I guess, and that's that you will have to avoid occasional pitfalls, environmental pitfalls, for example, and there is a Slenderman-ish type character who will pop up from time to time and try and kill you, essentially. But really, there's not much here in terms of game mechanics. Now, two areas of design that I did take issue with are the save system and the map, and I've said something about the map already, but the save system, there's no manual saving in this game, and as a result, you can be set back significantly if you haven't found a checkpoint for a while, right? This is very frustrating. I found this very frustrating, and it did lead me to stop playing twice when playing the game. I just quit out of frustration twice. I did come back, obviously, because I was reviewing the game, but if I hadn't been reviewing it, I may not have continued to play, honestly. It was very frustrating, let's just put it that way. The other area is the map, and it doesn't help. It doesn't tell you where you are in the world. Now, I understand the developers have kind of made that choice intentionally, it's quite obvious, but you have no idea where you are half the time, and there are some indicators around the world that give you coordinates that are written on rocks, which is kind of just silly and contrived, quite frankly. And it will give you some idea of where you are, but it's just very unhelpful. You have to use coordinates to find out where you need to go, and you have to use coordinates to sort of determine roughly where you are. Now, fine, the coordinates to find out where you have to go, that's okay. I mean, I understand that. They want you to sort of just find the place instead of just being told exactly where to go. But telling me where I am would have been very much appreciated, because honestly, right now it just leads to frustration. And the only thing I can think of as to why the developers chose to do this is to sort of unnaturally extend gameplay. Because if you have some idea of where you are, it makes it quicker to get where you need to be, and then it shortens the experience. And right now the experience is quite short to begin with. So, yeah, but right now it just causes frustration, honestly. It made me frustrated a number of times. Those two issues are very simple to solve. You just add a marker on the map to show me where I am, number one, and number two, you add a manual save system. And you've significantly elevated the quality of your design, in my opinion. This is a difficult game for me to give a conclusion on, and the reason for that is that I'm not a huge horror fan, okay? I don't really like horror movies, and I don't really like horror games, and I didn't actually realize this was a horror game when I picked it up. With that being said, it was kind of a good experience, honestly. It scared the crap out of me on a number of occasions, and that may be because I'm not accustomed to all of the tropes of horror films and horror games and stuff like that, so you need to take that into account. It was a tense experience, and for a horror game, that's what it's trying to do, and it did it well. And the visuals are fantastic, the sound work is fantastic, the world building, and just the atmosphere of the game is rich and very satisfying, honestly. If you're the kind of person who likes that stuff, you'll probably really enjoy this game, and I have to recommend it based on those things. The areas where it falls down are the story, which sadly isn't as satisfying as it could have been, and those two game design issues that I pointed out before. If they can fix those, it'll be a much better experience and will lead to a lot less frustration. The area of contention for me right now is the price, and it's $20. That may be reasonable for you, but for me it's a little high, especially when you consider you only get 4 to 5 hours of content, and that's not rushing it. That was my review of Kholat for PC. If you found this review helpful, please let me know in the comments. If you disagree with something I said, feel free to let me know also. Otherwise, like, favorite, share, and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.